Greetings, my fellow tacticians. I am Doodleman149, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be diving back into the brutal universe of Warhammer 40K Tacticus. Today I'm breaking down the 5 sniper characters in the game and determining who is the best. I'll look at their stats, potential equipment, and abilities to determine who is the best. In case you were wondering, I'm specifically talking about Certus, Calandis, Sho'syl, the Neurothrope, and Sarquel. I think I already know who is the best, but perhaps I'll surprise both you and myself. Grab your bolter and let's get started. But before we get into this video is sponsored by myself. That's right, in case you guys didn't know, which, let's be fair, none of you do, I have my very own merch shop over on Spreadshirt. I've got a few designs based on some stuff that I frequently say in my videos and just some other designs that I like. My personal favorite, which I'm actually wearing right now, is the True Doodle Fan shirt. The shirts are high quality, soft, and unbelievably comfortable. So if you feel like getting some good clothes and supporting your favorite small YouTuber, then why not head over there and snag something nice for yourself? You deserve it. The link is in the description. Before we start breaking down these grimdark warriors, let me explain what I feel constitutes a sniper character. A sniper is a character with a single hit, range 3 normal attack. This definition is very basic, but it explains why I decided not to include Maugan Ra, Makatep, Thaddeus Noble, Snap Rekka, Golgorts, Jark, Barakiel, Sygex, Yazgor, or Toth. Maugan, Makatep, Thaddeus, Snap, Golgorts, and Sygex all have a multi-hit ranged attack. Jark, Barakiel, Yazgor, and Toth all have abilities that allow them to reach range 3 attacks, not actual regular attacks. So, as such, we are left with the Ultramarine Certus, the Eldar Ranger Calandis, the Farsight Marksman Sho'syl, the Neurothrope Tyrannid, and the Dark Angel Sarquel. The first thing we'll look at is the base stats for all of these snipers and compare them. For this test, I'll be removing any equipment that could impact the sniper's health and armor. No items directly increase damage or movement, so only the armors need to be removed. All of these snipers will be tested at the gold standard, which is gold 1, with the caveat that they are all also legendary 3-star as well, or the first grade of legendary. This should be a simple section, so let's dive in. We will start with Certus, the Ultramarines Eliminator Sergeant. For health, he has 1603. He has 482 armor, he does 1468 damage, which has a bolter 20% pierce ratio at range 3, or a physical 1% pierce ratio at melee range. He also has a movement of 2. Our next sniper is Sho'syl, the Tau Firesight Marksman. He has 1737 health, 426 armor. He deals 1414 piercing damage at range 3 with a pierce ratio of 80%, and pulse damage at melee range with a 20% pierce ratio. His movement is also 2. Next up is the Neurothrope, the Tyrannid Psychic Organism. The Neurothrope has a whopping 2269 health and an average 453 armor. For damage, it deals 658 damage with a range 3 100% pierce ratio psychic attack, or a melee range 1% physical attack. His movement is also 2. Calandis, the Eldar Ranger, is next. She has 1870 health and 480 armor. She deals 1202 physical damage at melee range with a 1% pierce ratio, or at range 3 with energy damage that has a 30% pierce ratio. She has a movement of 3. The last sniper for this list is Sarquel, the Dark Angel's Hellblaster Sergeant. He has 1870 health and 534 armor. He deals 1335 plasma damage at range 3, which has a 65% pierce ratio, or he deals a 1% pierce physical damage at melee range. He also has a movement of 3. Now, I know I've mentioned it a lot already, but let me just really quickly define what pierce ratio actually is, since it'll play a big factor in determining who is best. Pierce ratio is the minimum percentage of damage that an attack will do against an enemy with armor equal to or greater than a unit's damage stat. I'll make it real clear with an example. Say a character deals 100 damage against a target with 100 armor. If the attacker has a 20% pierce ratio, he will deal at least 20 damage. So in this scenario, that is Certus. Calandis would deal 30 damage, Sarquel would deal 65, Sho'syl would deal 80, and the Neurothrope would deal 100. I hope that clears things up a little bit. Now, just taking a preliminary look at the base stats, it looks like the Neurothrope is the tankiest, seeing it has the highest health by a wide margin. The next highest health is Sarquel and Calandis, who are still 400 health lower than the Neurothrope. In terms of base armor, Sarquel easily wins with the 534 armor. The damage stat is a little bit trickier though. For full-on damage output, Certus takes the cake. However, when pierce ratio is taken into account, Sho'syl is the clear winner, since the pierce ratio of piercing damage is literally 4 times that of bolter damage. That means, against targets with decent armor, Sho'syl is outperforming Certus every time. While not ideal, we should also look at melee damage potential, and Sho'syl again takes the cake with pulse damage as his melee damage model. Pulse, again, has a 20% pierce ratio, while the rest have physical, which only has a 1% pierce ratio. But now that does not mean Sho'syl is the best overall. Now, we need to complicate things even more by factoring in equipment and abilities. For this section, we'll again start with Certus. For equipment, Certus has a crit weapon, armor, and a crit booster slot. This can allow him to have up to a 40% chance to get a critical hit on an enemy if a bolt pistol and legendary frag grenade are combined. For armor, he can either strictly boost armor with greaves or boost health and armor with a pauldron. I typically go with a pauldron, but even with these boosts, his health and armor are still fairly unimpressive. His traits are Overwatch, Heavy Weapon, and Infiltrate, which prevents him from triggering Overwatch attacks. For his abilities, his active is a single heavy round shot that deals between 1,517 and 1,687 damage, while also pushing back the target 1 hex if available. This ability is also doubly affected by his heavy weapon trait, which boosts damage by 25% if he hasn't moved before attacking. This would mean, if he hasn't moved, this attack can do 50% more damage. Combine that with heavy round damage having a 55% pierce ratio, and this is honestly an extremely powerful ability for taking out a single target. His passive reduces the damage he takes per hit by 169 per hit if the hits against him are reduced for any reason, such as being next to a big target or being in tall grass. He also has Overwatch, which allows him to preemptively fire at targets if they move within his damage range. All around, Certus' abilities really carry him as a character. For Sho'syl, we have the same item slots as Certus: crit weapon, armor, and crit booster. Seeing as his base stats are higher than Certus in terms of health, this equipment can help to even the playing field on armor as well. For abilities, Sho'syl's active is a missile lock that targets an enemy within range 5, which is a massive range, and marks them with a marker light, an effect that increases Tau range damage against that target. The following turn, before anyone can move, a missile will land on the targeted unit and deal between 2,407 and 2,727 heavy round damage to that target. This ability is not affected by any hex effects and can't crit, but with that massive damage and impressive damage model, he doesn't really need to. This is essentially a longer range, stronger in some cases, and delayed version of Certus' active. It's a great way to open a battle on larger maps while both sides likely won't reach each other for the first turn. Before we get into his passive, I want to mention the traits Sho'syl has. First off is the close combat weakness, which reduces his damage output if next to an enemy, or if he has started his turn next to an enemy. This can be a huge factor in his combat effectiveness. His other trait is camouflage, which reduces the number of ranged hits coming in by 1 if on a regular hex, by 2 if the attacker is more than 2 hexes away, or by 3 hits if in tall grass. This is all the more incentive to keep Sho'syl off the front lines. Now let's take a look at his passive. His passive is the deployment of sniper drones that he actually uses to make ranged attacks. These drones, at the gold standard, have 641 health, 898 piercing damage at range 4, or physical damage in melee range, and 160 armor. He can have up to 3 of these on the field at any point in time, and a new one is summoned every time he performs a ranged attack, using Sho'syl's damage stat for this attack. After that initial attack, however, the drones function like any other summon and use their own stats. These drones also have a protector protocol and may take 50% of the damage targeted at Sho'syl if they are still adjacent to him. This passive can quickly overwhelm enemy teams with multiple high damage, high pierce attacks from untouchable distances, should he be allowed to set up shop. Finally, moving on from Sho'syl, we have the Neurothrope. For equipment, the Tyranids have unique gear, but for the Neurothrope in particular, it just boils down to a crit item, a block item, and a block booster. This gear actually gives the Neurothrope even more potential when it comes to being the tankiest sniper, because not only does he have the highest health, it also has a chance to just completely negate a certain portion of the damage being thrown its way. For abilities, its active is a range 3 life drain attack that deals between 706 and 963 psychic damage. If the target is suppressed, it adds 705 damage to the attack. If not, it then suppresses the target. Then, after hitting the enemy, it then heals itself and all friendly adjacent Tyranids to an amount equal to 55% of the damage dealt to the enemy. This is the only way a Tyranid can heal its allies and can be particularly annoying if used when the Neurothrope is at the center of a Nid cluster. For traits, the Neurothrope also has close combat weakness, it can fly, it's a Psyker so it has Smite, meaning that 50% of its original attack hits another adjacent enemy as well, Shadow in the Warp, which reduces enemy damage of enemy Psykers within range 2, and Synapse, which is really only helpful for NPC Nids. For a passive, the Neurothrope has another relatively complicated one. When attacking an enemy at range, the Neurothrope implants a Neuroparasite, which increases in level for each time the target is hit by a psychic or suppressing attack. In this case, up to level 14. For each level of Neuroparasite, the Neurothrope deals an additional 706 damage, meaning that its maximum damage potential at level 14 Neuroparasite is dealing 10,542 damage per hit, which is insane. This pretty much only occurs, however, on raid bosses, and that's still crazy numbers though. The Neuroparasite can be removed, however, if the target is healed. Now, moving on to Calandis. The equipment is very crit focused, with 2 crit items and a crit booster item. As it sits with an epic fusion charge, Calandis has a 61% crit chance. This allows for Calandis to do massive crit damage should she land one, which, statistically, will happen more often than not. This can play a huge role in negating her relatively low damage output, since crits do not account for enemy armor at all, bypassing it completely. In terms of traits, Calandis has Heavy Weapon and Overwatch, which were both previously explained. For abilities, she has Fire and Reposition for her active, which allows her to move and attack, after which she may make another normal movement. Any ranged attack she takes in the following turn will have its damage reduced by 856 per hit. This is a great ability in Tournament Arena for both doing a quick and damaging hit and run on an enemy, or as a way to grab multiple power-ups efficiently. Her passive is a Wire Weave Net that allows Calandis to make a preemptive strike the first time she is targeted by a normal melee attack per turn. This attack deals 2 times 342 to 514 piercing damage, and, if the attacker is killed, their melee attack is negated. Both of these abilities help to make Calandis surprisingly tanky under the right circumstances, while also being a highly mobile crit dealer. Seems that Sarquel is who we will end on. His equipment is just a crit item, armor, and crit booster. For traits, he has Overwatch, Heavy Weapon, and Final Vengeance, which allows him to perform 1 additional normal attack upon his death, provided he is not overkilled. For abilities, he has Supercharge, where he launches a plasma shot at a target that splashes the 2 adjacent targets behind the initial target, dealing 856 to 1027 damage per target, with a 25% increase in pierce ratio applied to all hits. All further plasma hits this turn and the enemy's turn dealt to these targets will also have that plus 25% pierce ratio, putting the pierce ratio at 90%. This can be helpful for dealing with a cluster of high armor enemies, and it synergizes well with Azrael and Barakiel. His passive is Grim Retribution, which fires a retaliatory shot against an enemy in range who either hits Sarquel or another adjacent Dark Angel. This will count as an Overwatch attack, but it is possible to have an enemy move into range, trigger Overwatch, hit Sarquel or an adjacent Dark Angel, and then also trigger Grim Retribution, essentially causing a double Overwatch hit. The only difference is that Grim Retribution deals between 856 and 1027 plasma damage, so slightly less than his regular attack. Whew boy, that was a lot of stats and comparisons. So let's lump them together and see who is best and worst at what they do before giving you the final rankings. Certus is honestly a great counter sniper. His health is not great, nor is his mobility, but he can get within Overwatch range of all of these snipers and can deal a lot of damage with his active. If he can move into tall grass, then he is more than likely to survive any retaliation from those snipers as well. If he's able to stay stationary, dealing that 50% extra damage with his active is also great for breaking hard targets. He's just slow and fragile. Sho'syl is next and looks like he can deal the most intentional damage per round. After 4 rounds, which is a long time, Sho'syl can have hit you with his active, dealing nearly 3,000 heavy round damage, and have 3 sniper drones hitting you, with one of them dealing nearly 1,400 piercing damage. His drones can also keep him safe to a degree and are a great distraction for AI enemies. He can be fairly heavily nerfed by activating his close combat weakness, however. His only real limiting factor is his mobility and his low armor, but most of these snipers aren't exactly great in the armor department anyway. The Neurothrope easily has the most damage potential out of all these snipers, but the only problem is that the damage is highly dependent on very specific teammates buffing the damage, the target surviving long enough to fully realize the potential, and healing removing the neuroparasite, although Mephiston's passive prevents healing, so he's a good pairing. Aside from that bonus, the Neurothrope hits pretty weakly when compared to the other snipers, so its opening volley is more than survivable. It's also very slow, but has the highest health of any of the snipers. It is flying, so it can potentially get him out of a sticky situation, but he also has close combat weakness, further hampering his already middling damage. It's best against guild raids mostly, but it can be a nuisance in tournament arena. Calandis is great for most game modes, as her very high crit chance and crit damage more than make up for her relatively low damage stat and pierce ratio. Her active makes her tanky to ranged attacks for 1 round, and her passive lets her be a mini Jaeger for 1 hit. Her mobility is also excellent, being able to essentially move 6 hexes when used with her active. This makes her great for power-up tournament arena matches, since she can frequently grab 2 in 1 turn. Her only real weakness is her physical damage model in melee, which, with 3 movement, can often be avoided. Also, if she doesn't crit, her attacks just are not that hard hitting. Sarquel is an Overwatch master. He has higher than average armor and health, deals decent damage, better than Calandis at least, and has the ability to hit an enemy 3 times in a turn if things play out very specifically. In this very extreme instance, he can land an Overwatch hit, get hit and fire off Grim Retribution, and then can be killed by some other means to deliver a final vengeance attack as well. The last one is less likely, but the double Overwatch has happened for me plenty of times. He synergizes really well with other Dark Angels and feels like a better version of Certus all around, given how high a pierce ratio plasma damage has when compared to bolter damage. He's also more mobile and can hit multiple enemies with his active. He's just all around a great sniper. So, after all of that, who's coming in last? Well, it's... who else but Certus? Certus has the potential to deal massive damage to a single target, like a sniper, but his squishy nature, slow movement, and situational passive, as well as his bolter damage model, all hold him back. Next up, I would have to argue, is the Neurothrope. While the potential for the Neurothrope is very high, in practice, reaching the Neurothrope and negating its psychic attacks and activating its close combat weakness is just all too easy. It has the most health out of all the snipers, but it just does not hit as hard for some game modes outside of guild raids. Next, in third place, we regrettably have Sarquel. Easily my favorite on the list. He is stronger and more well-rounded than Certus and the Neurothrope, but, as I stated in the summary, he's a good all-rounder with some impressive damage output. He's very middle of the road, leaning on the above-average side, but compared to Calandis and Sho'syl, he just comes up slightly short of them. In second place, we have... Calandis, and holy crap, I can already hear your keyboards now. Calandis is excellent, easily one of the best characters in the game, but there are just a few things that put her in second place. Her mobility and active are great for getting her where she needs to be without her being punished by ranged attacks. Great for eating Overwatch hits as well, and her passive can sometimes protect her from a single melee attack as well. The only thing that holds her back is her lower than average damage, with a damage model that's just honestly is not all that good. She is still fantastic with all of her crit boost and crit damage, but she just falls short of... Sho'syl, the best sniper in all of Tacticus, is a Tau. Who would have thought that the faction that avoids melee combat like the plague would make for the best long-range unit? Now, many of you are likely disagreeing with me, saying that Calandis is better, and that is perfectly fine. Everyone has their own opinions. But, for me, Sho'syl steals the show for a few reasons. Firstly, his active can put out massive damage to a single target before they are even remotely within range. Next, he's technically a summoner, but all of his summons deal close to 1,000 damage a hit, have range 4, can fly, and will take hits for Sho'syl should they need to. On top of all this, all the drones and Sho'syl himself deal piercing damage, meaning that his 1,400 damage per hit will do, at minimum, 1,120 damage. The same cannot be said for Certus's 20% pierce, Calandis' 30%, Sarquel's 65%, and the Neurothrope's weak initial damage. This damage can, of course, be hampered by close combat weakness, but this effect can also be removed if Sho'syl pairs with Darkstrider. However, seeing as I didn't pair any others with support characters, I will not here either. Regardless, my point still stands from before about making it to round 4 with Sho'syl attacking every round. Can see him putting out thousands in damage every round with his drones and himself firing from relative safety. And that is why, in all, Sho'syl is the best sniper in all of Warhammer 40K Tacticus. So that's my rundown of the 5 true snipers in Tacticus, and my assessment as to who is the best. Certus just lacks mobility and penetration. The Neurothrope has great potential, but it's rarely realized outside of guild raids. Sarquel doesn't really have too much going against him. He's got good damage, mobility, and armor. He just falls a little behind Calandis and then Sho'syl. So, if you found this guide helpful, or fun, or entertaining in literally any way, then hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more Tacticus content. I'd like to thank my lovely Patreon patron Zane Tor for his continued monthly support, and I encourage you to join him if you like what I do here. At the very least, you know you'd be acknowledged every single video. So, until next time, I've been Doodleman149, and remember to purge the heretics, suffer not the Xenos to live, and reclaim the galaxy for the Emperor!